John Huntsman, the former ambassador to the Chi-Coms for Obama, the former governor of Utah, has announced his intention to seek the Republican presidential nomination. He did it this morning in New York at Statue of Liberty. Yesterday and this morning, we have a montage of the state-controlled media orgasmic over this. Listen to this.
John Huntsman set today to do his best Ronald Reagan impression.
John Huntsman channeling Ronald Reagan.
The same spot Ronald Reagan kicked off his 1980 general election campaign.
Wants to channel Ronald Reagan themes of American renewal. Obviously an attempt to invoke the imagery of Ronald Reagan.
This is the spot where Ronald Reagan announced his presidential bid in 1980.
Invoking the memory of the sainted Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, that's what they're hoping to evoke.
Right, symbolism here, ladies and gentlemen, announcing in the same place as Ronaldus Magnus does not make one Ronaldus Magnus. There's somebody else announced there. You guys ought to know this. There are Californians, of course, watching the program on the other side of the glass. You know who else announced their presidential intentions at the Statue of Liberty? 3, 2, what? Any guess? You want to make a guess? Pete Wilson. Yes, the former governor, the former senator, Pete Wilson did so. And he was also attempting to claim the Ronaldus Magnus mantle, the symbolism. Here is Huntsman. Let's listen to Huntsman. Now, and folks, this is not, it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be interesting. Because we're going to play Huntsman. And we're going to hear Huntsman describe how we have to go after Obama, what we can't do, and what we must do. And we're going to do all this as Reagan would have done it. Don't forget that. Here's the first of our many sound bites.
Let me say something about civility. For the sake of the younger generation, it concerns me that civility, humanity, and respect are sometimes lost in our interactions as Americans. Our political debates today are corrosive and not reflective of the belief that Abe Lincoln espoused. I don't think you need to run down someone's reputation in order to run for the office of president. I respect the President of the United States. He and I have a difference of opinion on how to help a country we both love. But the question each of us wants the voters to answer is who will be the better president, not who's the better American.
You see where this is going. And I mean, this is reminiscent of McCain getting rid of anybody in his campaign who dared use Obama's own middle name. Even that was considered to be provocative. So you don't need to run down anybody's reputation. I respect the President of the United States. This is Consultants 101. It's exactly, and I'm sure Huntsman believes this himself as a moderate. This is what they all believe. And by the way, he is, I'm sure, I don't know this for sure. My best guess is that he does not want to be considered a conservative. That because being considered a conservative is all those cliches. And I'm sure the consultants have said to him, stick to policies. Don't be critical of Mr. Obama. Don't attack Obama. He's a great American, blah, blah. American people won't put up with it. You take a look at the polling data, folks. There are people angry as they can be at this president. There are people who think his reputation deserves to be questioned. His policies, everything. Well, I don't know how you separate the man from his policies. When you go vote, it's not the policies on the ballot. It's the candidate's name. This is so much hogwash. And this is how we penalize ourselves. But this is what political consultants bring to the table. Here's more. This is Huntsman again telling us how he's going to operate his campaign and various other things associated with it.
Behind me is our most famous symbol of the promise of America. President Reagan launched the 1980 general election campaign from this very spot. It was a time of trouble, worry, and difficulty. And he assured us that we could make America great again. And through his leadership, he did. Today, I stand in his shadow, as well as the shadow of this magnificent monument to our liberty.
Okay, so behind me, our most famous symbol, the promise of America. Reagan launched his campaign from this very spot. Time of trouble, worry, difficulty. and so forth. Now, one of the things, you have to forgive me here, but I'm a little resentful of people who are nothing like Reagan trying to be Reagan. I mean, Mr. Huntsman's not said it, but the mindset that he evokes has told us countless times from very many different people and voices that the era of Reagan is over. But when it's time to go out and get votes, isn't it amazing? Even Obama tries to channel Reagan. They all do. And Reagan was an unapologetic conservative, and there was none of this talk about civility and all of this. And now the image that we've got here so far in Mr. Huntsman's announcement, we're going to be civil. We respect the president. We're not going to attack his reputation. We are going to be like Ronaldus Magnus. Don't want to tear down anybody's reputation. Well, listen to how it's done. By Ronald Reagan. This is September 1st, 1980, Liberty State Park. Statue of Liberty kicking off his general election campaign.
The Carter record is a litany of despair, of broken promises, of sacred trusts abandoned and forgotten. His answer to all this misery? He tries to tell us that we're only in a recession, not a depression, as if definitions, words, relieve our suffering. Let it show on the record that when the American people cried out for economic help, Jimmy Carter took refuge behind a dictionary. Well, if it's a definition he wants, I'll give him one. A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his.
Oh my God, how vicious! Can you believe how mean-spirited Reagan was? Why, he went right after the reputation of Jimmy Carter. My God, he was making fun of Jimmy Carter. He was making fun of him, laughing about Jimmy Carter being no different than a dictionary. Why, I can't believe how uncivil Reagan was. I didn't hear Reagan talk about how much he respected Carter's reputation. I heard him talk about how damaging Carter was, and Reagan was just getting warmed up.
I have talked with unemployed workers all across this country. I've heard their views on what Jimmy Carter has done to them and their families. Let Mr. Carter go to their homes, look their children in the eye, and argue with them that it's only a recession that put dad or mom out of work. Let him go to the unemployment lines and lecture those workers who have been betrayed on what is the proper definition for their widespread economic misery. Human tragedy, human misery, the crushing of the human spirit. They do not need defining, they need action. Call this human tragedy whatever you want. Whatever it is, it's Jimmy Carter's. He caused it, he tolerates it, and he's going to answer to the American people for it.
Wow, can you believe this? How? You believe Reagan? Are you going after Jimmy Carter here? Jimmy Carter, this is misery. Whatever this human tragedy is, it's Jimmy Carter's. Meanwhile, the Republican consultants of today are advising every Republican, don't do that. Don't go out there and make this about Obama. You got to attack the policies, but you can't mention Obama. Don't do that. You got to be like Reagan. Well, here's Reagan. You want to be like Reagan? Listen to Reagan. You notice, by the way, the energy that Reagan is exhibiting here. There's no boredom. There's no soft-spoken intellectual seriousness. There's passion. There is deep passion here. Nobody listening to Ronald Reagan make this announcement in 1980 had any doubt what he wanted to do and what he thought about what was happening to the country. He was dead serious about fixing this because he cared deeply about the misery and the destruction that one man had brought about, Jimmy Carter. He was unabashed and unafraid to lay the blame for all of it at the feet of one man, the sitting president at the time, Jimmy Carter. And yet, and Ronald Reagan, 2 landslide victories, and they tell us, got to be like Reagan to win the election. But no, the advice these people are being given, and maybe they don't even need the advice, maybe they believe it themselves without the consultants, they can't do this in this area. You can't go after Obama this way. Now, here's the line that Huntsman quoted from Reagan in context, and it's a little different than the way it sounded from Huntsman.
I'm looking forward to meeting Mr. Carter in debate, confronting him with the whole sorry record of his administration, the record he prefers not to mention. If he ever finally agrees to the kind of first debate the American people want, which I'm beginning to doubt, he'll answer to them and to me. This country needs a new administration with a renewed dedication to the dream of an America, an administration that will give that dream new life and make America great again.
Okay, so that's the context of running down the reputation of one Jimmy Carter that Huntsman said he wasn't going to do. But perfectly clear here to me who Ronald Reagan thought the problem was. Perfectly clear to me what Ronald Reagan thought the solution to the problem was. Problem with Jimmy Carter. Problem was not just his policies, because you can't separate. Reagan didn't distinguish. He didn't run around and say, I like Jimmy Carter. Jimmy is a great guy, but his policies are causing this. He didn't say that. He went for the throat. I marvel here, folks, at how all these experts telling us how the Republicans need to act and how they need to campaign to win. And they hearken back to the great civil days of Reagan. I'm not saying this is uncivil, but politics is what it is. It's a hard-hitting business. And if you get into these races to win them, you have to go after the people you want to replace. And we are where we are precisely because of Barack Obama. But if we're going to run a campaign which tries to mention that without mentioning it, well, it's going to be that much more difficult to pull off.